Right, so today we're going to be talking about what I would consider the ideal sort of setup electrical wise for a van, for any van really. So this is going to be going in. Hang on a sec. This is going to be going in an extra long wheelbase Transit H4 L4. If you know what that means, long and high. But also this is what I would put in, or something very similar in a small van, in a Vito, in anything really. As you can see, it doesn't take up very much space, so we've put it in this cabinet, and this is going to be going in the back of the van where the bikes are going to be stored. Battery is going to go under here with a little cover that goes over the top. There is still ventilation going up the back and little vent holes there. But just to give you a bit of an idea, like this sort of a setup, in my opinion, is basically what you need to get off-grid electrical power consistently, where you haven't got to plug in to a Shore adapter, you haven't got to put a load of holes in the outside of the van. You can run all your 12-volt stuff. The only thing this is missing, and why there's potentially a gap here, is for an inverter. If you did want to put an inverter on, if you wanted to use your sockets. Now, for me, it's never really been something I need in vans. It's quite wasteful on power to be inverting from 12 volts up to 240 volts, and really a lot of, we like going away in vans because of where you go, not because of you can have your TV and your internet and everything in the van. So this is sort of a bare bones version of what I think is sort of essential really. So with this, I've got a 450 watt solar panel, just one panel, and that again is sort of a nice big panel that's going to produce enough power to sort of charge everything for the output that we're going to be using. And also we've got the Orion XS. This is the 50 amp battery charger, so that will charge your battery whilst the alternator's running. So basically whilst you're driving, that'll charge it. There is also the 30 amp one that I normally fit. This is a bit more expensive. The specs on this, if you're going to be doing a lot of winter travelling, where you're not going to be necessarily gaining a lot of the solar power, the specs on this are very impressive for the amount of charge it puts into the battery. So we've got that. We've got the 30 amp charge controller. It's all Victron stuff. I only really use Victron now. It's above and beyond better than anything else that I've tried really. So we have 450 watt of solar, and again, the point that we're making with that is that it's one panel, it's one connection coming in. You haven't got, a lot of people have a load 3 or 4 smaller panels on the roof spaced out around the skylights and windows and stuff, but it might, all these components, electrical components, all have a lifespan. They all need to be serviceable, they all need to be replaceable, and in my opinion, having one panel that's as big as you can possibly fit is the way to go. Obviously it depends on the sort of power output you're using, but and if if you're living in the van, it might be a little different, but we're talking about, camper vans that we all use for fun and leisure and, go camping and whatever else, take the bikes out and stuff. So this really isn't a setup for, if you're living in the van, you are going to need more storage, an inverter, bigger power, 240 sockets and stuff. But really, for me, this is more of the ideal situation. So here we've got the isolator that's ready for solar coming in. So the solar's going to come in here. We've got a battery isolator here, sort of external fuse board. So in here we've got fuses for your solar charge controller, for the battery charger, for your sort of smaller fuse panel that's going to feed all the electrics and appliances and everything, and you've got your main big boy mega fuse there for your battery. And also because it's so close to the battery here, that's ideal really. If you are DIYing this and you don't understand how to size fuses for your battery, for your cables, for your appliances, that's going to be the main thing that's going to make a system like this dangerous, is fuses wrongly sized or cables wrongly sized. So your fuses are there to protect not just the appliances or, you know, the things that you've got in there, but the cable as well. So your fuse is sized so it protects the cable, so the cable doesn't melt before it damages anything. It's really important that you understand that before doing any electrics. If you aren't sure about electrics, always just go and talk to someone who is, or get someone to do it who knows. You can also go to places and buy kits that already have the fuse sizes in, but this is the mini fuse board. So here we're going to have stuff like, on this system we're going to have fridge, there's going to be feed for a diesel heater, lights, charging points. We're going to keep all the charging points to 12 volt, you know, again, not inverting any power up. And for the most part, even now you can get laptop chargers, 12 volt laptop chargers and stuff. That's going to be much more efficient than running a socket, you know, wasting all that power. And also, you know, unless you're using it as an office, I don't know how much, I don't use a laptop on the road. Again, what we've got here is 460 amp Fogstar lithium battery. Now this is spec'd for, you know, this is a really good quality battery. You know, these are very good and Bluetooth connected and self-heating, you know, it's very clever. If you are going to be using a lot of power, this sort of thing, you know, lithium battery is a good idea, you know, on a even just on a 12 volt system like this. This is going to give you a much better time that you can stay off grid, really. And in combination with the Orion XS and the solar panel, you shouldn't ever have to be, you know, charging this up from a shore adapter, you know, which is just another hole in the side of the van, really. So, and as well, for a big 460 amp battery like this, if this wasn't lithium, this would weigh, you know, I wouldn't be able to pick that up. But you know, this being lithium, I mean, it's still a big battery, but it's not as heavy as like your gel or your AGM or, you know, your wet lead acid batteries and stuff. So this is also, that's going to go under a cover. Then we've got two doors that are going to cover all this. Reese is going to actually use this half as just sort of storage for now, because the bikes are going to go in here with the handlebars above. And until, you know, if he ever wants to upgrade stuff or add things in, we've used this trunking as well, so you can just add stuff in, and which is nice. And I sometimes like to do little cutouts in the plywood, but this is much better for a system that might be upgraded in the future or changed or added to. So with in terms of price for a setup like this, you know, there's always going to be alternatives. So like this 50 amp charger, they're about 280, 300 quid, I think, something like that, by the time you've got your delivery and your VAT and everything on there. The 30 amp one, I think, is about 170, 200 quid. So, you know, quite a bit cheaper. It depends what you're prioritising, really. If you're prioritising it being, if you're prioritising, you know, budget or charging ability, you know, and this is ability to stay cool when it is charging is one of the things that keeps it, you know, that means it's expensive, but it means it's doing a really good job of it. The charge controller is, I think they're about 120, 130 quid, something like that. You know, they're really good value, and they do a great job of it as well. It's important that you keep your cable lengths as short as possible, and that's why, you know, all this is sort of bunched together. The battery's very close and the solar will be coming in the shortest route that it can into the top of there. An isolator like this will cost you about 45 quid, something like that. You can get cheaper ones. These isolators are about 20 quid, I think, something like that. Similar with the fuse board. There is a Victron version of this, which is about 160 quid, the Lynx distributor, which is a good option if you're going to have a 240 volt system, if you're going to have a big inverter. It just has more mega fuse and it's a bit more heavy duty. Again, it's one of those that it isn't necessary really in this setup, and you are still able to run an inverter off this. So this bus block, God, I've had that in stock for a while, about 20 quid, I think, something like that, and similar for your fuse board, 15, 20 quid for something like that. Trunking is, you know, tenner a length of it or something like that, you know, it doesn't make a massive amount of difference. And then a battery like this, you'd be looking at about £1,000 for something like that. So that's like, you know, it's a mega good battery, really good quality one. It isn't always necessary for your setup. You know, a lot of smaller vans, you could get a good quality AGM or gel battery for 250 quid. Again, you can get a cheap leisure battery for 100 quid. And, you know, I've used stuff like that for years, and it never been a massive problem, really, because what I use the van for is travelling, not, you know, sitting in the van and using a hairdryer. So, yeah, so there's your sort of price. And then on top of that, you know, you've got to look at, if you are going to install it properly, you're going to have things like your lugs, your shrink wrap, all the fuses that go into here, all of these terminals and stuff like that. It all adds up, and your cables, you know, this 50mm cable is quite expensive. You know, we've not used a lot of it here, but it all adds up. So, I mean, really, for something like this, because, I mean, you've got £1,000 just in the battery. In this sort of a setup, you've probably got 500 quid, maybe a bit more. And then you're going to look at the labour that goes into it if you're going to get someone to do it as well. The unit itself is just something I've built to go in. You know, there's a couple of days work just in that, and then, you know, your battery cover and your door and stuff. To get something like this installed in a van, it's going to be, you know, a couple of £1,000, really, if you want it done properly. You know, you can do it yourself as long as you're informed and you on your decisions with your cable sizes and your fuses, and you know what you're doing. You know, don't guess stuff like that because it's dangerous. But if you're informed about it, you know, you can save yourself quite a lot of money and get a really good quality set up with that, really. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and the only thing that'll really be, you know, you'll have power coming in and stuff like that, but this could go in any van. You know, any vehicle, really, and this box could be, you know, just half its size there, really. I've made it this big so that it sort of fits nicely in the van and is sort of adaptable. You can add stuff into here. With something like this, you can add, if you were to add something like a Starlink in, you know, and a mount on that, you'd have your off-grid Wi-Fi. You can then add your inverter in, have your off-grid 240 volt power. You know, all this stuff is still going to be capable of running that. So, and also what you've got to remember is, if you are going to do it yourself, you know, to do something like this, I use pretty much every one of these tools that's in here. Although it doesn't look like a lot, you've got a couple of £100 worth of stuff there, you know, in good quality electrical tools. Yeah, so this is sort of like the terminal crimper. So that's what I use to crimp on these lugs. It's important that they're, you know, really tightly attached to the end of these, and then a bit of shrink wrap around the outside as well, just to make the terminals safe. You know, they're not massively expensive, and if you are serious about doing it properly yourself, you know, something like that's going to be definitely necessary. This is for doing the little end terminals like this. So that just crimps the end on like that, and it just means that instead of having your bare wires going into these terminals, you have a much more solid fixing. You know, these are not going to wriggle their way out when the van's moving and stuff, so it's just a much better quality way of putting the terminals on the end. These are smaller sort of crimps, similar to like this bit on the cable strippers. These I haven't used much yet, but when it comes to doing the smaller terminals on the fuses, these sort of things are really useful, and that's just a little cable stripper, and that is heavy duty snip. So, you know, if you've ever tried cutting some cable like this just with tin snips or with pliers, you can make a right mess of it. So a good quality pair of nice sharp nippers like that is essential. And then this is my multimeter, so I just use this for resistance testing. I can test fuses with it. I can just sort of test the safety of everything, and you know, I can get actual resistance readings for cables and stuff like that for sizing the fuses. Yeah, there's quite a lot of stuff. There's always alternatives, cheaper alternatives that you can use. However, you know, like these are cheap tools and they've done me well for years. You can't get cheap versions of these, or that's about as cheap a version as you can get of that, and it still be usable and functional, you know, and safe as well. If you are serious about doing it right, it's worth investing in getting the right stuff. Oh yeah, and just making sure that all of these come with specifications and data sheets, and it will tell you, you know, these need ventilation. It's important that if you are putting it in a box like this, that you have ventilation gaps that can draw fresh air in and expel it like that.
So you've got the holes up there?
Yeah, we've got the holes up there, and it's quite important, you know, that all these electrical components create heat and can create quite a lot of heat. Like I said before, the battery charger is very good at staying cool, and that's what keeps it efficient. But as you can see, the charge controller's got fins on the back. You know, it needs airflow behind it, and a lot of these electrical components do need good airflow, just to keep them functioning, really. All right.